What's up, everybody? So, unfortunately, I've gotten injured. I had a chronic injury that turned into an acute injury. So, my indoor season is done. So, going forward, I have to focus on things that I can do while I rehab the injury, seeing as I don't have the budget to, see physical therapists and do that sort of thing. I have to rehab it myself. And I think as athletes, as coaches, we have to do as much as we can to be reliant on ourselves, not because, other professionals are not good. They provide a lot of value, but if you don't have the budget to afford fancy therapy and things like that, then you have to be able to rely on yourself to fix issues when they arise. So I've run a few races this indoor season, slower than I expected, but that was really because of the injury. And as I continued to compete, the injury kept getting worse to the point where eventually it seems that I had probably a grade 2 strain, either in the rectus abdominis, the adductor longus, or something in that area. So kind of the sports hernia type of injury. So what are the effects of that? Well, A, I can't sprint. B, I can't sit up out of bed. But I can do a lot of other things. I can do heavy quarter squats, half squats. I can do hand-supported split leg squats. I can do pogo hops. I can do a lot of things. So the silver lining here is that while the injury sucks, it's painful and it limits my ability to move, there's still a lot of things that I can do. And I think it's important to remember that if you ever get injured, which is it's just kind of a part of the training process. Obviously, there's things that we can do to mitigate getting injured. But in the situation where you do get injured, you have to find whatever opportunities that you can so you can still train, so you can still work toward your goals. And, while that thing that is hurt is healing, you can still be developing other areas so that when you come back, you haven't missed a bunch of training, you haven't, lost all of your fitness, lost your strength, and that sort of thing. So what I'm doing to rehab the injury, aside from just my general, strength and conditioning type of work, is I'm having to work a lot on pelvic stability and the muscles that stabilize the pelvis. So I'm trying to hit the pelvic floor muscles, trying to hit the deep core muscles, as well as just the core in general, teaching my body to better stabilize the pelvis so I can get some tension through that area, help stimulate healing in there, and then also improve my body's ability to control that, so that way when I come back to sprinting, I'm able to sprint without having this injury reoccur. I'm also having to work on internal rotation of the hip because I noticed that leading up to the injury, my right leg, which is the side that got injured, was severely lacking in internal rotation during the swing phase. So as my leg would come through to the front side, my knee would go out to the side, my leg would externally rotate, and that was putting a lot of stress on that area, sort of in the crease of my hip. So by doing those things, I am noticing that my mobility is getting better, pain is going down, things like that, so that's a positive. As far as more general training, I'm focusing on heavier lifts right now, slightly larger ranges of motion than what I typically do, so that way I can stimulate some strength gains, which can later turn into higher power outputs, higher rate of force development, and that sort of thing. So I'm sort of just approaching it like not totally a general prep phase, but going back into sort of a blend of general prep, specific prep with my lifting, so that way I can stay strong, and when I come back to sprinting, I won't have lost my force outputs. I'll just have lost some of the ability to sprint, and then as I get back into sprinting, my speed will come back online and hopefully everything will be all right. Now, the reason that I got injured was partially because of lack of, basically poor core control, pelvic control, poor internal rotation on my right hip. But the biggest thing that actually caused this injury to get worse was not letting myself recover. So if you recall back to when I ran that 150 personal best, I had played a football game that week. That made me really sore through my lower abs and through my adductors and sartorius, so inner thighs and abs. Then I went and ran that 150. I ran a personal best, but after that I had a significant deep aching sensation pretty much every day throughout my whole lower core. But instead of seeing that, I ran a personal best, that's a good sign, I should now let my body recover, I doubled down on my training and I went even harder. I, kept pushing it. Then I had some personal bests over 90 meters, 120 meters, some flying sprint personal bests. So I was improving as a sprinter, but my overall body health was going down because this injury that was stimulated by the football game and then running that 150 a couple days later, I didn't give it time to calm down. So it just continued to sort of be a lingering issue where I was chronically sore and having aching feelings in my lower abdominals and in my anterior hips. So I kept pushing it. I went up and ran at a meet at NAU. I ran 697, which is my second fastest opener ever. But I felt hesitant because I just had that soreness throughout my hips and lower abs. Then the next week I went back, ran again. I ran 699. This time I had significant pain deep in my pelvis right after the race. So I iced my lower abs just to kind of make the pain go away because I had a 2-hour drive home late at night. I didn't want to be in pain the whole way. Woke up the next day and I was limping. I had trouble walking. So at that point, I should have said, okay, it's time to shut down my season, right? Like I should just take the L, be happy that you had your second fastest opener, even though I was able to set a personal best based on my times in practice. The injury was not letting me put out full effort when I was sprinting by this point. So I should have just said, okay, let's let it rest, let the injury calm down, and just focus on outdoor. But instead, I took about 2 weeks, went back to another meet, and in this meet, when I got to about 30 meters, something gave out. It was either rectus abdominis, adductor longus, something in that region. But right about 30 meters, I felt it give out, and you can see in the video that shortly thereafter, I completely lose my footing, my hips collapse, and I'm falling toward the line. And I had that grabbing feeling or that rapid shortening feeling in a muscle that you get when something gets strained. Immediately after that, significant pain, limping, much worse than it was the last time. So the lesson here is if you run fast, you need to give yourself a break, okay? If you set personal bests in practice, you need to modify the rest of that week's training to be less aggressive. If you set a personal best in competition, that following week should allow your body to recover, and you should not load yourself with high velocity sprinting at, in reasonably high volumes, maxing out in practice if you've recently set a personal best, because when you run faster than you ever have, you're putting more stress on your body than you ever have in sprinting. And if you don't give your body the adequate time to recover from that, then you're going to end up in a situation like me where you have something that becomes a chronic injury, and then if you keep pushing it, that chronic injury is going to become an acute injury where now you have a bigger problem on your hands. So most people who get this injury require surgery. I don't think that I do. Maybe I'm just fooling myself, but I think I'm going to be okay. It's just going to take time, probably take a month or something like that to get back into running at any reasonable pace. I was able to do the air runner, like the curve treadmill, at about 40-50% maybe. So that's a good sign considering I was barely able to walk about 10 days ago. I think that's a good sign. I'm not going to push the velocity on that or anything, but I do want to stimulate my body in the way that I'm reminding it that, hey, you can do this movement. Even though we're doing it I'll do it either at like 40% or I'll support myself with my hands on the little handrails on the treadmill and then cycle my legs to take a little bit of load off of the pelvic stability aspect. And so my goal is basically to utilize both strength training exercises to stimulate just general, hormone release and general qualities like getting stronger, to use certain targeted exercises to develop the areas that were weak, which led to the injury originally, and then to reintroduce movement patterns like dribbles, low intensity running, things like that, to remind my body that you can do this movement even though we're not going full range of motion, we're not going full speed, you can do this movement. And then over time I'll increase the range of motion and the velocity as the pain and discomfort allows. So I'm not trying to push to the point of pain, but I'm trying to find that line where it's not painful, but I'm getting close to that point. Over time, that will get better just naturally as a result of doing it. And because I view movement as medicine, I think that's the best way to go, especially if you don't have access to physical therapists or anything like that. So to recap, if you're about to compete, don't do something that's completely different. So me playing a football game a few days before a meet was a really stupid idea. That was the first mistake. Second mistake was going and competing at that meet while being really sore. Third mistake was after I set a personal best at that meet, not taking time off to let my body recover. Another mistake was continuing to push my training even when the injury was becoming something that wasn't going away. Then the final mistake was choosing to compete when clearly it was very obvious I had an issue. But I was not being disciplined. I was not listening to my body, and I was being impatient. So if you guys want to avoid injury, you need to be patient. You need to let your body recover after intense training or setting personal bests or running at competitions. And hopefully, as with a lot of things on this channel, hopefully my mistakes can teach you something so that you don't have to fall into the same issue that I've fallen into. So, I'm not depressed about it. I'm not sad about it. It's a little frustrating, but I see it as an opportunity to learn more about my body, learn new ways to train so that way I can help athletes, not get injured themselves, learn about how the deep core works, how the pelvic stability, how that all works, and try to improve that. So that way when I come out of this, I can be a better athlete, I can run faster, and set some new personal bests. So hopefully this resonates with you guys. Hopefully you can get something out of this video. Make sure to check out sprintingworkouts.com if you want information on sprinting, you need consultations from me, programs, anything like that. Check me out on Instagram if you like more short form content. Post a lot of reels on there and little, tips and tricks, things like that. But that's all I got for you guys today. So hope all is well with you. I'll catch you next time. Hope training's going well. This is Cody Bidlow with sprintingworkouts.com and ATHLETE.X signing off.